We're live, we're good to go.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It is 5:30 on Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. And I now call to order the City of College Place City Council Workshop. Jerry, would you please take roll call?
Mayor Hernandez,
Present.
Councilmember Jessup,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Espinoza,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Williams,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman is asked to be excused, and Councilmember Boyle. Present. We do have a quorum.
Perfect. Thank you all. Will you please just join me in the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started? I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance.
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Now time for public comment. Sherry, did anyone submit a comment?
I did not receive any written comments. And there's no one in the attendees.
Okay, so then I'm sure there's no one in attendance that would like to speak. So let's move on to our workshop topics. We have quite a few, so let's get moving. First, we have the My Civic app presentation by Deputy Finance Director Desiree Schmidt.
Hi, thank you. Let's see if I can share my screen here. Do you all see the PowerPoint presentation?
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so with Tyler Technologies, with the changeover for the new ERP system, we acquired a app for the city. So Mike and Brian thought that it would be a good idea to present it to you guys, just so you can see what's to come. So the app currently isn't live yet. We're continuing to test a few things and make some changes, but Tyler Tech did all of the work. They took all of the information off of our website and created what our app currently looks like. You can see here, this is the home page. We're able to change things like the layout, the background, what options you see there, you're able to select. The phone icon in the upper left-hand corner brings up the City Hall phone number where they're able to dial directly from there. We can add other city numbers that we want as well. But this is what we currently have. So we've got an option for government, places to explore, pay and renew, events, news, businesses, business directory, and report an issue. So I'll just go into detail on them. I know we've got a long agenda, so I'll be quick. So for the government app, when you click on that, you'll see this page pop up here, the bigger one, where you can click further into options like mayor or values and vision. The city council page lists all of the council members, their position when their term ends. It gives the citizens an option to email the council members directly to their city email. If you click on boards and commissions, it'll take you to a similar list of all the city's boards and commissions. You can click on an individual board or commission and get more information about it, who's on the board or the commission members, who the commission members are, as well as it links to board docs for meetings, meeting agendas and minutes. So there's a lot of information here just under government. For places to explore, this is pretty neat. It gives you a location of, currently it just gives you a location of all the city's parks with an interactive map and directions as well. So Tyler Tech had mentioned that one of the other cities that they work with has an art walking trail that's within one of their parks that they're able to link to their park map through their app. So residents that go there can follow the walking trail, and it leads them to different pieces of art, and it gives them history on the art or just information on the art. pieces. And so when you click on our city park, such as Lions Park, it gives you the address, a description, and what amenities are offered there. The pay and renew tab gives you these following options to pay permitting fees, your utility bills online, or it just takes you to utility bills. Once we have Tyler Tech fully up and running, the permitting link will link with the community development modules. And so if somebody needs to pay for a permit, they'll be able to do that through the app. They'll also be able to pay their utility bills through the app as well, through Tyler Tech, but for now it just takes them to Express Bill Pay, which is what we currently use to pay for citizens to pay their utility bills online. The utility bill option currently takes them to our website and gives them more information about the different utility providers in the city. So city of College Place, who the cable providers are, internet, electricity, garbage, etc. It lists who the company is, and it gives them a direct link to their website and their phone number if that's available as well. This directly mirrors one of the pages that's on our city website currently. So that's where they got all the information from. Oh, Councilmember Peterson, do you have a question? No, maybe just your hand raised. Okay, I'll continue.
You know what? I just learned I gotta unmute if I want to talk. Does this site allow people to set up their online payment?
Currently, so this is an app like on your phone or tablet. It would
Right.
allow them to set up their utility payments online. It just takes them directly to a page that mirrors Express Bill Pay. But we're going to go away from that, and we're going to have a product with Tyler Tech, so it would allow them to set that up as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, the events page is also really neat. It's one of the features that a lot of this mirrors our current website, but this is one of the features that doesn't, that's really cool. So all of the city events that are listed on our website are automatically updated through the app, and they're listed here. So when you click on events, it brings up this calendar, and you can select a date to see what events are on that date, or you can just scroll through all of the events in order. If you click on an event, it'll give you the option to add it to your calendar on your phone, so you can get reminders, as well as see all the information that's listed for the event. Through the app, the people that, or the residents that have the app downloaded, we're able to send out push notifications to them for reminders for the events. So for trunk or treat that's coming up, if they had the app downloaded, we would be able to send out a push notification reminder to them, like, hey, this is coming up, or if something happened, hey, we need to cancel this. So it's just another way to communicate to our residents about events.
Hey, Desiree, does the public have access to submit events to be listed on that calendar?
I don't think currently, because right now it just mirrors our website. There is an option to where they can report an issue, and we could definitely make that one of the options to where they could submit that, and then somebody would need to add it on there. I would assume a city staff member would want to approve that before it gets added on there. So then, yeah, there's definitely an option to where they can submit something like that. We can make that an option for them. That's a good idea.
I was just curious, because like I know with like the, you know, the Walla Chamber and different places that have like their community event calendars where you can submit things. Might be kind of a neat thing if they can do, and I just wasn't sure. So that's fine. I just
No, that's a great idea. We it's really customizable what we can do with it, so we can definitely add that as an option. Councilmember Espinoza.
Yeah, quick question. Does this app offer the ability to offer push notifications in case there is like an emergency citywide? Are you able to push notifications to the app users?
Yes, so you're able to do that. Like if we needed to close a road or something like that, Tyler Tech said that we would be able to send out a push notification for that. So I would assume, especially if there's an emergency that we need to send out a push notification for, we would be able to do that as well.
Good. That's
Oh, yeah.
very useful. That's very useful. And I just wanted to make sure because, nowadays people are connected through apps and social media. So if has the ability of doing that, that's wonderful.
Yes, yeah, the push notification feature of the app is one of the bigger differences between somebody just going to our website to find information. Again, they have to have the app downloaded, so we'll definitely push for people to get the app downloaded, but it does have that feature, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so for news, this page just gives you all the recent news that's posted on our website. If you click on one of the titles, such as volunteer firefighters needed, it'll give you more information and let you read the news release. This page also updates live from our website like the events do. So we only have to update it in one spot. So we just update it on our website, and then there's a live feed that links between the two, and it'll update it through the app as well. The businesses page gives potential businesses or existing businesses information about getting started or growing their business. The next slide has the business directory, which is helpful for existing businesses. This one is one that they set up. If we don't find it useful or we don't find that people are clicking on it very often, then we can definitely take this off or change it as we need to. The business directory page lists all of the different categories of businesses, which we can add, change, and remove as well. It tells you what businesses are in each category. So if someone was looking for dinner options and they click on restaurants, it'll give them a list of all the restaurants that are in College Place. It would give them a direct link to their website if they have one, their phone number, directions to the restaurant, etc. One of the neat parts about this too is that businesses can register with the city. Obviously it has to be approved by the city, but they're able to register through the app, so that way they can send out promotions or any kind of specials to the citizens with the push notifications. So if they've got a special going on, or if they have a discount for app users, they're able to send that out through a push notification to promote their business. Again, the business has to be approved and verified with the city prior to them being able to do this. And just like any other app, residents can turn off push notifications if they find that they're getting them too often, or change that if they need to.
And is there a cost to the businesses to be listed, or is that just part of because they're in our city?
That's just because they're in our city. There's no extra cost to them. And then the final option from the home screen is report an issue. So this page currently gives you the option to report issues for potholes, light poles, animal control, abandoned vehicles, and grass and tall weeds. And this, we can rename report an issue to something else. Like Monica was suggesting, we can also have an option to where they can submit an event, and then it could be on our events page. That would be here. So if you click on one of the options, a user profile box will pop up asking the citizen to fill in their information. Depending on which one they click on, they are allowed to stay anonymous if they want to. Some of them require that they fill in their information, and that's solely up to our discretion. We can change that for each type as we see fit. But if you click on light poles, for example, it would give you a page where you can use the interactive map to drop a pin and locate exactly where the light pole is. It gives you the option to enter the pole number, which would be helpful for public works. If there's a light out and we contact Pacific Power, let's say they want that pole number, we've got all that information in a report from the citizen. They can also attach a picture too if they would like to. When you click next, it'll give you the option to add notes on what the issue is. And this is where you would be able to add a picture if they wanted to. The process works the same with the different report options. Once the report is submitted by the resident, it notifies the appropriate departments, and then they're able to take action on it. Like I said earlier, a lot of the options are very customizable by the city. Tyler Tech just took their typical platform, and then they took the information on our website to create an app that was specific to us. Currently, Brian and I have access to go in and change things and play around with it. We've done training, different staff members have done training for this as well. Yeah, I think that's really all I've got. Does anybody have any other questions?
Councilmember Jessup has a question.
A question and a reminder, if I remember correctly, several months ago, we kind of had as a action item for us, we kind of approved having it updated in doing Tyler Tech, right? And the part of Tyler Tech and part of the budget that we approved was, this is a part of their, like, this is some of the benefit of that approval, right? Like, some of this is a part of hiring Tyler Tech to help. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So this is just one of the benefits of switching to Tyler Tech as an ERP system.
That's right. ERP system. That's awesome. This is great in terms of, we're talking about professionalism and updating interactivity. In terms of the interactivity, I'm assuming, but I don't know, does this have the option of having multiple languages available?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I will definitely ask. I'm assuming that just the information that they took off of our website, I'm not sure if our website allows different languages or not, but Brian and I have meetings with them almost weekly, so I will put that on my list to ask and update you.
That'd be great, thanks. I think that would be kind of big for our city.
I think yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So Daisy, when you said, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, I just saw that Councilmember Williams had a question.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. I mostly have a couple of comments. I think this looks great, but as someone who struggles with both hand tremor and am starting to get cataracts, I think it'd be really helpful if the names of the things, like where it says government, places to explore, etc., if those could be larger type, like about the size of College Place, you know, that type. And then if you notice, depending on what's behind the text, it can be really difficult to read. And you can fix that by having a little shading behind the text so that the contrast is always there regardless of what the picture looks like.
Right, and I think we're able to update that online. We can pick whatever background we want. You can see that the half circle where it says College Place, where it's kind of hard to read. The rest of the screen is a little bit darker. That's a setting that we can choose. We can completely black it out. We can, you know, it's as transparent as we want it to be.
And if you make because I used to have to do this all the time and still do sometimes. If you make the
actual image,
just the background to the text, like a dark color, so it's like an oval or something, then you can change the picture and not have to go back and go, oh, okay, now this picture is darker, so now we have to change all the stuff that we had in white text, we have to change that to black text, you know, or whatever.
Right.
So that's just one suggestion. The other one is I really liked the idea of like the art walk and stuff. And I know that some of the schools in the area, their students as part of social studies would make little videos, and you could just scan the QR code and get the video to pop up. So, and I don't know how well those are being maintained, but it seems like that would be a good way to maybe coordinate with our schools and have not just, I mean, art would be great, but also have like, this is a history thing. This is our 4th grade class voted, you know, this is the best ice cream in town or whatever, you know, so just a thought there.
Yeah, those are great.
Any other
And if
questions, comments?
Yeah. Councilmember Peterson. I'm sorry, I'm multitasking here remotely. How do I get this app?
It's not live yet. We have a few bugs and stuff to work out and changes to make. But otherwise than that, it would just be available in your app store. You would just search City of College Place and it would come up, and it's a free app that they can download either on Android or iPhone.
And we'll be notified when that's available.
Yes, they have they've got some suggestions as far as how we roll it out. And so I think that that's our next step.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Brian?
Yeah, just a comment. When you see the app on your phone, you can actually read the wording a lot easier when you see the app on your phone or your device. Also, a great part about this is that this is really an in-house app that we're able to make any changes that we need to make. We don't need to rely on Tyler to always make the changes. They will do it for you, of course, at a cost, but it's really an app that we can develop over time. So this is just the starting point.
Yeah, and like Brian said, if we make any changes, it's immediate to the app. If we make any big changes, and I think that they had listed certain ones, then it requires an update by the user. But as far as like changing the background or changing the layout, those seem to be pretty immediate.
Any others?
This is Councilmember Williams, and I would request that we make sure that we don't set things up so that you can only do them on the app. Because there are, believe it or not, still people who either don't have smartphones or don't have room on their smartphones for all of the apps that people want them to get. And for me, I have a hard time reading any of it that's on my phone because, you know, it's little. And so I much prefer to do it on my computer, and I get very frustrated when I have to go to the app to do something and I can't do it on my computer.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So majority of this is just mirrored from our website. I think the major difference is the push notifications that would go directly to your phone if you have the app downloaded.
Well, and yeah, that you probably wouldn't be able to do on the website, although you can sign up for emergency or for notifications, can't you?
Yeah.
Emergency management ones, yes, I believe so. But as far as, you know, canceling farmer's market or a road closure, I think that those would maybe not qualify as an emergency to some people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Desiree. We're quite excited about this.
We are too. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, so next, there's no further questions I asked, right? Okay. A draft of the 2023 to 2028 capital facilities plan.
Okay, this is the next three will be introduction documents to our 3-year plans. Now, for those new to city council, every year we basically do a 6-year outlook as to the needs of infrastructure, which would be capital equipment, which is like vehicles and generators and such, and then information technology, which is your hardware and your software. Now, where we do things a little differently, a lot of cities will just have stuff that's happening no matter what. And but the problem is when you do that is you preclude yourselves from a lot of grant opportunities that come up randomly through the year. So what we do instead is in the tables, we rank things as high, medium, and low. And what that means is that high means pretty much no matter what it needs to happen, it's happening. Medium is as we're monitoring funds and as we get grants, or if there's leftover money, we'll do our best to make it happen. Low pretty much means that unless there's a grant paying for a majority of it, it's not happening. So with that, we can dive into the capital element of this. So if you could click the booklet. And then go to page, I believe, 8 of it. No, 6.
So weird, she was in here.
Okay, so,
She was like,
but one more. Okay, there's 2 iterations of each of these plans. The Cliffs Notes iteration is the table, which you can take a look at. For those who are curious about prioritization, what a thing looks like, where's it at, or how potentially it's getting paid for, you kind of look in this booklet, which is basically a glorified PowerPoint slideshow with data in it. So page 5, this page right here has the priority projects, which pretty much we coalesce around need to happen no matter what. A is the wastewater treatment plan, and the study will be introduced tonight by Alex Bizzari. Will be here next meetings, so please read the study and come with your questions, because there's going to be a very important decision needs to be made on that later this year. I will say, once you read the study, you realize that basically no matter what route we go on this thing, this phase, no matter what's going to cost $26 million. So what it really boils down to is hedging your bet against phase 2 or 3, and then also comfort level in doing a regionalization solution. So that's like the boogeyman out there with this whole thing. But in reality, no matter which route you go for phase 1, it's still $26 million. And then other issues that arise with that, which we're still going back and forth with ecology, is if you do the regionalization, does it affect the grant portion? Because when we originally were going at this, it was the phase 1 here, and we're still having an iterative process through that. I'll just leave it there. I don't really have a clear answer on that for now. So wastewater treatment plan is number 1. Lions Park, we've assembled grants and keep assembling grants, so that's number 2. Southwest Majanier, really most of the construction would be 2024 and beyond, but we're doing the engineering, and it's important to open up southwest part of town, and the new intermediate school will eventually be going out there, so that needs to happen. The decant facility in Storm, same thing, we have money for the design and that's going right now, but basically moving to the next level, which would be construction. Wastewater, again, this was funded by Public Works Trust Fund. Lift station number 5, we're pretty close to being done on engineering, so now would be the land acquisition piece, which we're pretty close to having. Now is a done deal, and then the construction. And then water, over the years, that was done very much so upon what our previous public works director, because he was here for over 45 years, felt was the priority. As you may recall, over the last 2 years, we had professional wastewater system and water system plans done by a consultant and then signed off on by State Department of Health and Ecology. So we have much more of a formalized system for doing things now. So F, instead of just having like spot projects, it's mainly called the high priority water main replacement project, 450,000. And then that goes up or down dependent, per year, dependent upon the grouping of the lines, because we're trying to achieve efficiencies where they're nearby each other and then can bring down mobilization and other costs. Next slide. Then this slide just goes into the tieback a comprehensive plan, because whenever you're doing these, there has to legally, per the state RCW, tie back to what your comprehensive plan is. Next slide. And then we also have the strategic plan, and that has the 5 tenets, so resource development, cooperation, connection, infrastructure investment primarily, which this plan delves into. Next slide. And then planning for prosperity, which this also delves heavily into that, because we're trying to open up lands for to increase our housing stock, and then also economic development, and then optimal operations. Next slide. These are long-term financial strategies. These are within the financial policies. So this is basically the Northern Star of trying to put a lot of these plans together. And this has remained unchanged over the last several years as we've done this formal process. Next slide.
Wait, hold on, Mike, I want you to read us those guidelines.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
was just joking, they're so tiny.
Well,
And Sherry, I can't see if anybody raise their hand, so if they
Oh.
do, can you just call it out?
Okay, then this 7 part, this just delves into the general process of putting together the capital facility plan and then marrying it with the overall budget for the goal to have the whole package put together by December. Next slide. And then completed projects. These are ones that have completely essentially wrapped up this year. And that ranges the gamut from the fire training tower. There was open house earlier this year on that. The gun range is operational. The stop signs at Whitman and Large. The 4 Bikes project is finally done and all lit up and bikeable now. The water main replacement over at Sky and 12. And then the solar, right, if you go out there, that is substantially complete. So we're making a lot of headway, and a lot of the large scale projects will have outside funding. Next slide. Now we start getting into the overall summaries. Now what you're going to start to notice, especially if you do comparisons of previous years, is that the cost has dramatically shot up. Now rationale is a couple of things. Some internally, some externally. Externally, you're dealing with a lot of supply chain issues because we're competing against Tri-Cities, and a lot of these contractors, Tri-Cities was where money's made, so you have to beg and plead to get them to come out here. In fact, with 4 Bikes project, we actually had to pay an incentive to get them to complete it on time, and that was when we put that in when we let the project out, because otherwise we would have had to give back a $500,000 grant to the state. So I mean, that gives you a little taste of what we're dealing with. Also, to make sure we weren't letting out projects where then later on we wouldn't have money for them. This capital facility plan is trying to take in worst case scenarios. So wastewater treatment plant, that's gone up that's gone to such a degree. I feel that that's the cost by a lot of the smaller projects. Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have this interactive calculator where you can put in a cost at a point in time and then essentially project out month to month where inflation will take it. So that's what was done for all of these going into next year. So it's basically a guesstimate tying back into that BLS calculator to try, so that way there's some wiggle room. Hopefully it's going to come in less, but we don't know, especially with how all over the place everything has been. So this is our best way of trying to get to that point. As you'll see, the breakouts here for fiscal year 2023, I mean, it's not a surprise on the enormous scope of that project. 70% of the capital facility plan is wastewater with that plan. And then that's essentially followed up by parts of 13, which again, we have a giant project there, Lions Park. And then streets at 9, and then everything else is pretty minuscule relative to those. Now, over the years, you'll still see they have the wastewater, they have essentially streets, they take up a large gamut of everything, because a lot of those local roads, as I've mentioned over years, they've decayed. So really it's a combination of having to use as we're replacing utility money on utilities underneath, utility money, grants. We've federally classified pretty much as I would say legally we could, for sure. So there's a lot of that going on. And then naturally, as you can see, going on in a 6-year term, there still is investments in water at 14%, because I mean, we saw this summer, we were replacing the 2 wells that went down with the new 2 wells. But I mean, you still have an increased population and still at the same static number of wells 6 years ago. So we need another well, because as you all saw this last summer, because of one of the issues with the irrigation district that we help run, there was pretty close to another water supply issue again. So really it's key that we have appropriate infrastructure for our size population. Next slide. So again, this is just breaking out the numbers here. You can see what it is for next year. A lot of that's predicated with the large expense on the wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. And then you can see for the next 6 years, and again, I want to couch it, this is a wish list of items. You're going to see stuff in there that over the past years, just because we have some aging buildings, aging things of that effect, and then plus you have some increased levels of staffing, and people essentially need a place. So as we get into facilities, you'll see, and we're trying to make do with what we have. So you'll see, like with City Hall, we aren't proposing a new City Hall. It's basically actually following the plans that were approved way back when this was created. So believe it or not, back in 92, if you look at the old fire emergency maps, there was supposed to be part of this building that went out to College Avenue, and it was just never built. So, because I mean, right now, for instance, the mayor doesn't have an office in here. So that just gives a taste of the issues. So that's the 6th year. Next slide. And I'll be going deeper into this because again, this goes project by project. So I tried to do a wild guesstimate as to revenue sources over the next 6 years, which is a major guesstimate to try to, because you have concrete ones you can estimate, like your some utility rates, things like that. But development, a lot of that's dependent on the speed of the developer. Grants, it depends where the money's at, the state and the federal level. So there's a lot of fluctuation, especially when you're going through a 6-year period. First year is more concrete. Beyond that, you're just trying to chart the pathway forward. I would say one thing that's important to know is that with the resources we have, we cannot do near all of this internally. So the way this plan is predicated today, over 53% of these costs would be tied to grants and future developer contributions. So that's why it's really important to keep up on the various grants that are out there and make sure that we have the appropriate wherewithal to manage them and so forth, because especially with inflation and where we're located, things cost a lot of money, and unfortunately that's just how it is as of late. Next slide. So this gets into prioritization. The new part is in bold type, yellow type, which is that the supply chain inflation is affecting a lot of this. High priority projects are the ones that we're gonna be coalescing resources towards, and then the other ones will be done as funds on a permit. And you'll notice again, compared to past years, the other projects were punted out a little bit to allow for additional time of staff to manage a lot of these ones where we're having to do multiple grants and make them come to fruition. So like 12th Street, we originally had that happening sooner. That's been punted out now, so that way we can make the most important ones happen. And then you'll see the breakout of high, medium, and low, which I described earlier. Next slide. And this is just a map of everything. Next slide. And then again, just to make it more readable, I try to break things up with pictures. Next slide. Okay, so now we're in the facilities, and again, you'll see how I do this with all of them is where it's broken out by year, and then picture of what we're trying to do, and then how we're going to be trying to pay for it. So next year, the AV system, that's going to, a lot of that's going to carry forward into next year, because when that was originally bid out, there was some problems with suppliers getting equipment and everything else, and it punted it. So that's going to wrap up next year. Likewise, through our insurance carrier, we're going to file for a grant to deal with some ADA issues up front. You may know, be wondering what the little dots are on the sidewalk panels outside. That's what that is. Our right-of-way inspector was measuring stuff, and whatever didn't meet ADA, we're trying to essentially get that teed up and ready to go. And then also the arborvitae and tree maintenance, trying to improve some of that out there, because we've had some dying ones. So switching that out, and then also getting like a living evergreen type tree for the holiday tree, because we're always having to go up in the mountains to go haul a tree down here for Winterfest. Well, we have like a site to go put it in, so.
That's great.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so the idea is to actually plant a tree and just have one there. 2024, that is getting into trying to do some upgrades around the city hall. And we can look for grants for it. I will say typically when you're dealing with city facilities, that's usually a general obligation bond, and you can either do that kind of stuff for that scope of project. You can either do council manically, because we've been trying to pay down debt where we're able to, like for instance, Commercial Drive, or voter approved, but that's essentially some of the concept going into future years of how to pay for it. And you'll see a little schematic of what it could look like. And again, I would mention that that building envelope, that was originally proposed all the way back in '92. So this definitely is not a new concept by any extent of the imagination. And then as we get into future years, parking lot, the beam repair and paint, and then landscape. And what I will say is when we get toward 2024, if the desire is to do a council meeting bond, and depending, I would say, how bond rates are and several other variables, it may be more cost effective to merge some of the later year stuff into the one issue, because then you might be able to get a lower price, but that's going to depend on where rates are at and things at that given time. But that's just some general concepts. Next slide. Fire department. This building was built basically right around the turn of the century, so in 2000. Well, and the issue there is we've done a very good job as far as maintaining with the resources that we have, but a lot of your equipment in there is coming near the end of its useful life. So we had McKinstry, they did that energy efficiency savings study for city facilities. This was one of them. And you can see that, basically it just needs some upgrades for a building that's getting like past 20 years. That's especially important because, I mean, keep in mind, the majority of our fire and EMS force is volunteering, they're living there. So if you want folks to live there, it needs to be decent facilities. So for the next couple of years, we're still giving our contribution of the fire training tower that was split into thirds. Next year is dealing with that back staircase. We tried to deal with it this year, and unfortunately with contractors, there just wasn't like the interest on that. But we're doing some things where we think we can position it better for next year. And then 2024 is dealing with the HVAC and the lighting rehab. So that's a little over $1 million, because that's that for the most part it's original equipment from when that was built. And then some renovations for the dorm rooms and the dorm furniture, and you'll see the split out. So so basically for the HVAC rehab, that's going to be a split between facilities maintenance, and then there's various state and federal energy efficiency grants that you can get for emergency response facilities like this. Everything else tends to be facility maintenance. Next slide. And then police department. And there, in the budget proposal for this year, there's going to be a study going on as far as what is the true space need for a police facility. The thing I think that's important to know is that the current police facility that initially was not constructed for a police facility. I remember when Daryl was next door back when that was Black Cup, he originally told me that those were like apartments at one point in time, and even earlier than that was like a car maintenance building. When I got started here, it was split between community development and patrol, and then we shuffled stuff around. But that building served its purpose for when we had a smaller agency, smaller city. As you have a growing city, especially I would say just with safety concerns as of late, that is not a hardened building by any extent of the imagination at all. So there, it's in the proposal for budget next year to do a facility study to see what we truly need. And then that will have costs and as far as what the future plan should be. And then if that's a plan that the community agrees to, putting it to a vote of the people. That 2025 cost, that was amortized against what the city of West Richland just did for their bond vote, and then multiplied out I basically curtailed that cost by the population of the city, and then tried using that BLS calculator to kick it out, and that was the number that came back. So that's what was put in there. So that is what you'll see there. So basically, if we decide to replacement police building, the high cost is the estimate on that. If not, and that gets voted down or y'all decide not to do that, then there are HVAC and lighting upgrades that need to happen in the current facility. So if that whole plan gets mothballed, then and I believe we would know whether or not it would get mothballed or not within 2024, then essentially we would just do those HVAC improvements, otherwise no. Next slide. And then now we're getting into your infrastructure. So the utilities, streets, parks and such. Next slide. Parks. Really for parks, there's only 2 projects going on next year. One of them, for the most part, homeowners association is gonna essentially provide some funds, and then we'll get some grants to match it with. But this one is all hands on deck one. So Lions Park, we've been pursuing any and all grants to make this thing happen. And it needs to happen next year because a lot of the state grants have expiration dates of spring 2024, so it needs to happen in 2023. You'll see in the how we pay for it, that is a bear of a project, and I'm sorry, finance department for that one, because you'll see the split out. There's a lot of grants from all over the place going to fund this thing. I will remind everyone that so we have two forms of real estate excise tax. REIT 1 goes to pay for a lot of our street maintenance programs. The concept behind REIT 2 is that was adopted right around the time I started here. And that was to try to provide a local matching source for parks, because we never really had that. So that was the general premise behind that. But Lions Park, we've gone over that exhaustively. So splash pad, the multi-use field, fixing the pond up, electrical for the farmers market, really making that our community square of a park. And that's the key park project that'll happen next year. Next slide. Then Autumn Meadows, this one is one that we're in the process of inheriting. This was that private to public infrastructure program. So essentially they're paying us to upgrade the infrastructure. If we were just to do minor tweaks, the HOA funds would cover it, but the Park Arbor and Recreation Board, they're going to be having iterative discussions over the next couple months on what does everyone want that to be? Because there is potential to link it up to the parklet, which is up on top of the hill and stuff like that. So that'll again be a very iterative process. I do believe we'll be able to get some state recreation conservation funding for it because this city, per their plan, is chronically underparked. So next slide. And then there's other future ones, just so it's on your radar. So Kiwanis Park Rehab, I took that picture at night while I was out biking. So there's actually groups of kids, they actually bring portable lights out there and play pickleball and basketball. And like,
That's sad.
yeah, from like 7 p.m. onward. And then we've been getting a lot of emails from people living neighboring like Whitman PUD about, hey, can't you get like lights out there? Because those are really bright lights in my house. So that's why that's in there. And so, and we had the ESCO study go over that as well. So that's a fairly concrete cost. And I believe once we have REIT 2 recover a bit after Lions Park, we could match it with some commerce grant money. So that's the concept for that. Next slide. And then Harvest Meadows Park, this has been in for the last couple of years, just trying to establish the park standard. So having a sign saying it is in fact a park, basically bench, drinking fountain, things of that sort. So making sure it has similar treatment to the other ones. Next slide. And then Veterans Park, there are concepts about in the future that potentially, at least on top of the bluff, there could be additional residential. And then there's supposed to be wise size homes along Dillon's over there. And there's a lot of people that use that park because that neighborhood has about like 300 homes already in there. And right now it has the playground equipment, but that's about it. There was a community survey for that neighborhood that was sent out from the Park Arbor and Recreation Board, where folks in the neighborhood were able to communicate priorities. A lot of people express need for restrooms, picnic shelter, either basketball or pickleball, and potentially sledding over there. So we have that for in future years. And again, we would be trying to get RCO recreation conservation funds for that. And as further development happens out there, that will incur impact fees, which again could be used for the park. Next slide. And then this is really going to be driven by what happens out at the new development, the residential development by Lakeside. Because when you're going to develop that amount of homes and stuff, that is going to trigger a park requirement. So, and when you're doing the parks, I mean, you can just have them, the developer pay for it all, but then you end up in situations like Veterans Park, where you end up with barren land with barely anything on it. So we really need to be at the table for this one, and we're gonna try and work through it with the various developers and then also College Place Public Schools, because again, keep in mind that you have the high school and the middle school to the east of all of that. And then you have that intermediate school at the far west of that. So, and again, all of those drawings are very early conceptual. They're still going back and forth on a lot of it, but just know that amount of development is going to trigger a park. Next slide. And then this one is just as we're able to locate grants, because the predicament we're going to be in once we have Lions Park renovated is that the community center that does date back to like 1969. So eventually we should be, and we're already having conversations with Lions Club on this about essentially looking at revisioning the facility so that way it mirrors what's going to be going on at the park. We did try to put in for federal money for this. It didn't come through. I believe there will be future opportunities, both through appropriations and then also that creative district concept we're working on with the city of Walla and Art Walla. So there is potential. So that's why it's in here. Next slide. Okay, then this just shows the federally classified roads, and anything that's like colored and bright coloring is federally classified. We can get grants for it. Anything that's in the light gray, that's local, and we're on our own basically for those. Next slide. And then full corridor projects. So you'll see that I have utility ones, but full corridor means that we're replacing the road and everything underneath it. So storm, wastewater, water, so on and so forth. Next slide. Majanier Road. We have engineering underway right now on this. This is going to be a legislative priority to try to get some appropriation money, but rebuilding it to an urban standard. Because again, you're going to have all that development south, and then there's stuff to the west, and it's already a primary road. So engineering is going on. The concept is they have bike lanes, sidewalks, and then also have water and sewer underneath, because there is a neighborhood across that road, and it's not in the urban growth area, but there are a couple of homes in there that are on septic that are like near failing. So we don't have to rip up a brand new road. It would make sense to at least stub it so we don't have to mess up a new roadway. This is going to be one that will be aggressively trying to chase money for, because the cost on that keeps going up. Next slide. And then you have Birch 4th to 6th. That one, the concept there is the engineering of that, because there's a little creek that goes through the public works yard and then comes out underneath it. So dealing with the stormwater and then making sure the street is appropriate, because that's a hodgepodge of patches and potholes and stuff. Yeah, it really, and it has no sidewalk either. So this would deal with that too. So as you can see, very high price tag, but we believe we can get a lot of this with grants because of the stormwater tieback.
That's amazing. 1.5 million
Yeah.
for that little stretch
Yeah,
of
2
road.
block, yeah. Yeah. Okay, next slide. Then 12th, again, we're trying to kick back larger projects out some to allow room for Majanier and Lions Park and ones that are dragging current expense, because keep in mind the street fund, I mean, we segregate the stuff because it's best practice, but in reality, most of the street fund is basically a transfer from current expense. So that's something to keep in mind. So 12th, that would be a full rebuild with utilities underneath, sidewalks, and then lighting as well. State Transportation Improvement Board, they're very motivated to fund it. We're going to have a longer process with them though, because they're taking a much more, I would say, directive stance when they fund projects. And Utilities and Transportation Commission, they presented it where they had a wide array of infrastructure treatments in there. And some of it was good, but I think some of it would be a learning curve. So that's gonna have to be an iterative process. But I think we do stand good chance to get money on that one. Next slide. And then Verge second to fourth, again, just trying to fix that up. It's a local street, so that's trying to use local funds to patch up. It's very narrow street that they have. Next slide. And then 12th, Larch Tamira, this is a continuation of that original. We broke up into two portions because Transportation Improvement Board doesn't really like to fund projects over 4 million. So if you combine it into one ask, it'll actually scare them away and then you won't get anything. So that's why we have it, because I've been getting a lot of questions like, why don't you do the whole thing? And that's why. So that is the estimate for that time period. So it gets kicked out to 2027 on that one. Next slide. And then Dewey, that one is in need of repair. Again, you'll see it costs quite a bit of money because there's some decayed water line issues there. And the key there is, again, trying to make sure water reserves are healthy, and the same with street, because that's not federally classified. So we're like on our own for that one. And the way the traffic counts work, you can only get like federal classification if you're tying landmarks or other assets, and you have counts at least like over a couple hundred, then you can achieve that on that curve. So that's going to be a local, that one, to be perfectly candid, it's going to be as we have the funds. Otherwise we'll be perpetually like duct taping it just because of the high cost. Next slide.
A quick question, if we put in a traffic light or roundabout at the intersection of Larch and 12, could that significantly change the traffic pattern on the route?
It could. Yeah.
Good or bad?
Well, I mean, it's off of the traffic count warrant by about like 250 vehicles a day. So I'll just leave it there. If somehow the traffic counts magically got up to that level, there may be an ability to federally classify it. And that's what about on East Street. So. So that's full corridor. Now we're getting a utility specific one. So storm projects. Next slide. The storm decant facility. That one, we have eyes on us from ecology, because typically when you clean your street sweeper, you have a facility that does that and we don't. So that's a big requirement. There's a lot of, we'll be able to get a lot of that grant funded though. We've had good track record with them. Next slide. And then the outfall program, you'll see outfalls and dry wells. That's a fairly low cost way to treat stormwater and essentially satisfy ecology. And we can get a lot of grants for it. So in our storm plan, this is all spelled out and we can get it all partially funded by that. But it's quite important to do. And we have it every other year where it goes in tandem between outfalls and dry wells. Next slide. And then dry wells, that's just a way of passive treatment. We got a grant to do a study a couple of years ago, seeing if our ground would take it, and it would. So that's quite a bit cheaper than having to rebuild every road. So we'll be doing that in key areas throughout the neighborhoods above in College Avenue. And you can see that cost there. Next slide. And then Earl Lane, this is an important one. In this one, we're going after a grant to go get engineering completed on construction. This originally was titled the Stedo Quarter a couple of years ago, But if you all recall, the Stedo Court, the cost overrun on that was over like $100,000. So then this ended up essentially getting mothballed. Since that time, the street has flooded at a much greater extent, so we need to get on it. So that's why it's in there to happen sooner than later. Next slide. And then 10th Street, we're filing a grant on this too, and this is a continue what we did on the other side of College Avenue. You're supposed to be treating stormwater when you dump it from a roadway, and right now, the road actually sheet drains with no treatment right in the Garrison Creek. So if you go on the other side of College Avenue, you'll see it was repaved and there's curb gutter, catch basin, it treats it. So same concept, just other side of the street. And we're filing grants to make that happen. Next slide. And then Cedar, this one is in there. It's prioritized low and likely it won't happen unless we get earmark. I'm keeping it in there because believe it or not, a year ago, the state had additional money and it was very close to actually getting an earmark. So that may happen. It's Olympia can be weird at times and that almost did happen. So we need to keep it in there. Next slide. And then date, same thing, trying to do the stormwater treatment as it gets near Garrison Creek. Next slide. And then street projects, this is just dealing with pavements and that doing things underneath the road. Next slide. Chip seal, that's paid for with REIT 1, and you can see essentially the split out year to year, the neighborhoods we're covering. That's the rock that a lot of folks don't like, but it extends the life by many years. And based on the construction projects, you can see how much roads cost to fully replace. So this helps. The cost is going up though because of inflation. Historically, it's been around 60. We are bumping up 75 to accommodate everything. You can see various neighborhoods over the next 6 years estimated to be done. Next slide. Block resurfacing, essentially out of habit, it ended up where at least once a year, we'd have one block that we'd resurface. So we formalized it into more of a methodical program. And you can see these are streets we're gonna try to hit over the next 6 years. And it's paid for our REIT 1. Next slide. And Central College Place sidewalks, that has been fully funded by state CDBG. Every time we're done with a CDBG project, we apply for another, and then typically we get it. So that's the general concept. Next slide. Post office crosswalk, good news on this one. So we did get visit from the state pet and bicycle grant folks, and it turns out we're on the short list to get this. So I in fact I turned in a higher cost, which is now 178. Originally it was 90, and they're going to approve the higher cost for inflation, so that will finally happen. Next slide.
You don't know how much little victories like this mean to me.
And then downtown parking lot. We're gonna lightly touch on tax increment financing later. We need that to really kickstart development in College Avenue because the parking requirement is killing us, but it's also needed so you can actually have customers
Right.
to go park somewhere. So really TIF needs to pay for a lot of this. Next slide. And then a lot of stuff is having to do with that lakeside development. And then based on what's found with tax increment financing study, you can choose to go forward with it or not. And then you end up recouping money over time by the increases in the various taxation models, and then also the various developer impact fees. But we do have an easement for a main road to go east-west through there to connect everything all together. So basically from the high school onward to eventually where the intermediate school would be. So this would deal with signalization. Next slide. And then the east-west road. And again, all numbers came from the inflation calculator. Next slide. This one, we filed state grant for, and this would be to put the lights along Rose Street, pave the remaining block and a half of Damson that's sticking out like a sore thumb, and then fix the part between Lambert and Cary Court to match what City of Walla is doing. Next slide. And then Southeast Ninth, we continue to file grants for that. Luckily with the income survey, that's gonna help us build the case. But because we did get quite a bit of a response out of that block, so
Okay.
it'll help to build that, so it's actually a formal street. Next slide. And then we always hear about this one, the Myra Road, Dearson Village Way. We're gonna be working with this with our partners at City of Walla. We do not own City of Walla does, but a lot of the traffic generation does come from our site, so there is some exposure there. We continue to work on grants. Next slide. And then Public Works yard upgrade. This one we have, so basically we have a couple things. In 2023, some renovation improvements for the current facility, because keep in mind, the current facility, and this is a little bit sad to say, but it predates the city. That was from the old water district, and some of those buildings are converted chicken coops. And
Seriously.
yeah, no, seriously. And the thing was, a lot of our staff that worked there for a long time, they were okay with it, but now since you have retirements, you have new people coming on board, that I'll just say that's no longer like acceptable by a lot of the new folks, so
So
we're
you're
getting,
saying we can't in the future use chicken coops for all our buildings?
Yeah.
well, definitely not anymore, I'll tell you that, so.
Low maintenance employees.
There you
Yeah.
go.
So we're in a situation where we haven't invested out there, period, so it needs to happen.
Mhm.
So we have that for next year, and it can be divvied up between the utilities. There's rebates from Pacific Power for doing the energy savings, and then FEMA money. However, longer term, we do, like, for instance, if that police station concept goes through, there is a way where potentially you could have the police station up front and have public works stuff in the back, because I will just say longer term, a number of people that abut that have like dropped the concept that that's weird. You have a public works area in the middle of a residential area with a lot of people, so that is a consideration we may want to take as the city grows and depending what happens with the police thing. But either way, it's spelled out here so we can chase money. Next.
This is Councilmember Williams. Before we go on from that, it's actually even a little bit more complicated than that, because the city shop alley is right behind the house that I rent, and the other two apartments access is from city shop alley, not from our street. So about a year ago, they called the fire department and the police twice in one day. It was exciting. But all of them came to 6th Street, and then they had to drag the hoses, because there was actually fire. They had to drag the hoses through the next door neighbor's yard to get to the fire. So,
Oh, my goodness.
yeah. So I'm not sure how we let the police and fire know that they have to go, like they're going to the shop, but yeah. So it's,
Wow.
and then there's like 2 other places that come off of that alley. So I think, I've gotten used to the early morning trucks, but it is kind of odd to have it right in the middle of a residential neighborhood where and I know that Bade isn't that busy, but the visibility coming out is not that great. So not Bade, whatever, the street I live by.
Councilmember Jessup?
Real quick question, I'm sorry, you said that there's long-term potentially, whatever happens with the potential police update, and Public Works could be behind it, like where would that be located?
There are some general concepts that will be looked at with the feasibility study that would be in the budget for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be in there.
Where?
But physically
Yeah.
located, are we
Oh,
talking about over here?
Physically, I mean, some general concepts is that potentially you could put on part of the Whitman Drive property over by where the apartments are going, like as a buffer almost between the apartments and then the commercial area. That's a concept.
Mhm.
You could do it down south near the intermediate school. It would have to be on the edge of it because there's so much like density in the middle right here.
Yeah.
That would be too disruptive with a lot of the built environment stuff.
So it's conceivable.
Yeah.
That it could potentially move.
Yeah.
I don't know when the appropriate time is for questions and such, but it's conceivable that it could move.
Yeah.
And there's places in which to move it.
Yeah,
And so thinking about this being within the budget, it's almost $6.5 million. So like that cost benefit of down the road and how far down the road
Yeah.
type thing we're talking about. And how many potential houses do you think could fit in that public works yard?
I know, that's exactly what I was picturing, is like, how many residents could fit there?
I would have to a GIS analysis of that. I couldn't tell you right off the cuff.
Yeah.
What I will say is keep in mind, you would still have to allow enough access for the water tower because you aren't going to be moving that.
Right.
So-
And that's smack dab in the middle.
Yeah,
Still, we can do some duplexes, triplexes, something around it.
okay, and then other stuff in the future, Whitman Large, we have the stop signs. A couple of years ago, a study was done. It said as Whitman Drive gets developed out toward Myra and beyond, eventually that should transition to a stoplight. By putting it in here, you can have it where a developer shares in that, so it's in there. Next. And then 12th and Larch, dealing with that, there's the cost estimate. The same study, it did an evaluation of all of Larch. And because several variables, it said that longer term, potentially a traffic circle should be investigated. It could be other things. Again, when we hit those traffic warrants, we can take a look at that. That would be around time we do one of the phases at 12.
Okay, Mike, just a minute.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
Councilmember Williams. Can you go back to Larch and Whitman?
Yeah.
So another slide back.
Yeah.
Yes. Isn't this currently a four-way stop?
Yeah.
It says two-way.
Oh, oops. That's right.
I'm very happy that it's a four-way stop.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that was correct.
There's definitely, I'm gonna have to recheck this thing when I make 75 slides, yeah.
You truly made me question my own experience, but I decided in this case I was gonna speak up my truth.
Well,
I've been turning there.
Okay, next one's Whitman Drive. This one will just be dealt with as development happens out toward March Airfield. Only half the road was redone and the other half, which still dates back from when the county had it in pretty bad conditions. So making the other half match the south half would be a good thing.
So we own the entire road
We
out
do.
there,
Yeah,
but just the road, not the properties around it are the county.
that's a little bit of a mixed answer on that. So as you get near,
Course it is.
as you get near Homestead, the stuff to the south is, but then there's the area between Rogers School and Dones where there's homes on the south side and you actually think they're in the city, but they're unincorporated island. But then we have the road. It's really weird. So, yeah,
Okay,
it's a loaded answer on that one. So, yeah.
I'll accept the answer.
No. Okay, Whitman Drive, this is us parking money to eventually put in the filler for the sidewalk. This wasn't as important back when the county didn't have the multi-use path going out to Whitman Monument. But now that they do, it's a bit embarrassing because you actually have like a full-on bike path and sidewalk between Fort Walla and then Whitman Monument. And there's like a block and a half portion right in the middle. It goes to nothing. So that would deal with that. Next slide. Okay, then going into wastewater next. The treatment plant, I've said a lot about that. There'll have to be a decision made which way to go. Either way, it's gonna be around this mark of cost. And we did, technically, there is a funding plan in place. It can change depending upon what phase. I mean, if we did our own phase one, then the funding plan would be the combination of the earmark and ecology. If it's sent it to Walla, it'd be similar, except part of the grant portion and the ecology piece may be impaired a little bit because of essentially the change in scope, although we're trying to negotiate that. Next slide. The lift station 5, this is just replacing what I call the coffee can lift station in the sidewalk with a building across the street, so it's safer access for public works.
That's just awesome.
That'll get dealt with and completed next year. Next slide. And then the sewer lining program, we used to do this every year, but what we found with supply chain and such is that there's very few companies that do this, and they will not drive all the way out here if you just do like 100,000 worth of work. They have no interest. So instead we have to lump almost like 2 years worth together, even get them a bite. So that's what we're doing now. So it's every other year, and then it saves a lot of money and avoids having lines that are collapsed. Next slide. And then Central Avenue, this was one that manifested last year, and we found out about it when several residents complained, but there's a multitude of homes on this street that are served by a line, and we believe it's private, but it goes to several homes. And just as we're doing things on Central, potentially looking at replacing it with a conventional public line. Because this line potentially goes for about 2 blocks, city blocks. So that was in there from the previous plan. Next slide. And then water projects next. We have the high priority water main. You'll see that there's items in there every year. A lot of these are standalone projects, new plan grouped into one program. Next.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah.
Would like to speak.
Hey, Mike, back to Central. I don't know, that's what, couple back.
Yeah.
Is that Southeast Central?
Yeah.
You know, that is an interesting road off of 12. Is that on our radar for our sidewalks at all? What do you think?
That actually is. So that is in the Safe Routes to School application you all approved. I actually met with them earlier today, and that it looks very promising too. So there may be the ability to bump that up depending on how that grant goes. But there is a plan to put a sidewalk down there.
That's south
Yeah.
of 12th, correct?
Yeah, it goes from 12th and then it goes down the hill and ends at Valley.
Yeah, it's an interesting road. It really is, because it's right off 12th, and once you get off of there, it's like the Wild Wild West, you know?
You take your chances on it, huh?
No, it's like the yeah, it's something that needs, I think it needs improvement as far as the fact that you've got streets going off into lawns, going off into houses. It's really interesting, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yep. Okay, well, number 7 is ties in my earlier comments. We've been working on replacing our wells, but keep in mind, we're only back to a raw number we had when I first started 6 years ago, and we have about 2,500 more people in town here. So and especially that lakeside development that's gonna go, really, we need another well. So we have the engineering money in hand. That started the engineering, but we're gonna be writing grants, and we are to make the construction occur. And that, the plan is to place it on the land we already bought for the Southwest Sewer Lift Station, because there's a lot of extra land out there. Because we only need an acre, and the minimum that we could subdivide out in the county was like 5 acres, so there's like 4 acres left. So next slide. And then the water tower, again, we have the 2 tanks out east near Whitman. We have the steel tank, but just as we're having more development out toward Martin Airfield and then Lakeside, really that's going to need additional capacities on the west side. And we are looking at some land out on the grounds of the treatment plant, because there's actually a high point right above like the gun range actually, where it could go. And then there's revenue opportunities, because if you do a flat tower, you can make quite a bit of money off of lease revenue for the selling the IT carriers. I mean, there's a lot of them that want to go on the steel tower. But we have concerns as to the amount of weight you can put on the catwalks up there. So we take a much more conservative approach on that one. Next slide. And then the generator on well number 3, making sure that has generator like the other ones. So we're gonna make that happen. That qualifies under FEMA grant. Next slide. And then the water tower, again, working through that long iterative process, because it made it in the program. It's just frankly, it's a pain to get money out of FEMA. So that's in route, but that will happen. There'll be seismic retrofit and then some repayment. Next slide. And then the neighborhood water main program, and that just touches some trouble spots that were identified in the recently adopted water system plan. And with that, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go back to 2023. No, not really. I'm just joking. Wow. All right, let's go for questions or comments. Councilmember Jessup.
Oh, more than I can count. But a couple of things you had mentioned, like, for example, you had mentioned like the tower potential. So
Yeah.
putting in money,
Yeah.
not only to help keep us legal, compliant, safe, and prepping for future development, but also that's also lease revenue potential. So obviously it seems to me that we're out of state. We have 53% is grant money. And we're trying to continue to almost kind of like that, put out fires, like keep up with things that we're behind on essentially.
Yep.
So it sounds to me that we're in a sense of like, well, then where do we put money in which to get out of that whole 53% really reliance on grant money?
Yeah.
Are there medium priority, you had high priority, medium priority. Are there potential revenue, even if it's not necessarily popular, are there potential revenue sources that can help support, bump up some of those medium projects that gets out of that whole?
I mean, depending which ones you're talking about, there are, I mean, with the utilities, unfortunately, it's always the rates, but that's an option. With the streets, one thing where it was like half done and then never brought to a conclusion was that whole transportation benefit district. So Walla and Waitsburg have this, and that's it's voter approved. And then essentially when people go shopping, it's like 1/10 of 1%, and then that goes for transportation projects. And that's how City of Walla has funded all those like IRRP projects, and they just renewed it. Now about hardly was that long ago, but 6 years ago when I first started, we actually went to the trouble of adopting a legal transportation benefit district. In fact, it's in our code. It exists. Believe it or not, we have to file reports for it, even though it doesn't collect revenue. But then at the time, the decision was made to pull back on that because there was a lot of fires that put out back at that point in time, and it was decided it was a better triage to do the utility taxes because keep in mind, when we first started, we were, when I first started here, we were down to like 33 full-time staffers. Even though in 2000 we were at 60. So it was really trying to put out fires. So at the time, it was decided that you couldn't do both, but you could do one. So then we did the utility taxes, but then the TBD was never revisited. Now that kind of stuff could fund stuff like the Dewey Drive thing and the stuff like that. Because your only choices with the streets is try to federally classify stuff. I just don't know how long the feds are gonna buy that argument, because if you look at our map compared to other cities in this entire state, I would say we probably have like about 50% more streets federally classified per square mile. So I'm just cautioning, I just don't know how we can keep pulling that one off. So then unfortunately, at that point in time, you're left with local options at that juncture, because you can't get grants for these local streets.
And so we said one, so like, it's right now something in the nature of like 8.24%, like sales tax type of.
It tends to be, when you aggregate everything together, it tends to be 8.7.
Okay.
Yeah, so
TBD would put it to.
8.8.
yeah, it'd be 8.8.
It's cents on the dollar.
Yeah, and then we would still be,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we would still be essentially 0.1% behind City of Walla, because I know they're 8.9.
Would that help us prevent future fires we have to put out, knowing what's coming up when it comes to the streets and
Well,
sidewalks and so on and so forth?
Well, it would for sure, because to be perfectly candid with you, if we don't do that, I mean, I know everyone hates the whole chip seal thing, but everyone's just gonna have to get used to it because, well, it's the truth. I mean, if people don't want a transportation benefit district or some way to fund the local streets, there's limited abilities to pull magic to make it happen. So it's either you're just constantly filling the potholes and hoping it doesn't bust, or doing the TBD, or timing it with the utility projects. But then, to be perfectly honest, in a weird way, that's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you're using utility revenue to bolster up your streets, which I don't really think is that great either. And I mean, keep in mind
It
too,
wasn't the intent.
Yeah.
either.
and I mean, also keep in mind too, that with the large regional generators, we have like Hop Thief, Goodwill, Walmart, and Home Depot. That's a way for visitors to like share in the cost of the governance as well.
Absolutely.
So I'll throw it out there, because that's one of those things where that whole thing was weird, because we actually went through all the trouble of making it, and then it like went. So yeah.
So it's
I'm sorry.
your question.
No, so that's, thank you. The other one is that I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So thank you. The one is, right, so I'm trying to think through questions that would affect other factors down the road. So for example, like 9th Street, which doesn't look like a street, looks like an alley, but it's an official street.
Yeah.
It's a low priority and all that kind of good stuff, but if that was created to a city standard of a street, would that in any way affect potential businesses to come in, or affect any, even if it's just what it looks like on the surface, does that affect or give potential for future businesses or development in that area?
Oh, for sure. I mean, for sure, when you improve stuff to where it's actually like paved and things, that improves livability, quality of life, you're gonna mitigate flooding concerns. Cause I can attest to that personally, cause I used to live right on the other side of it.
But we just put a light there last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So that's what I'm kind of thinking, like, does that, because there's a lot you have to prioritize,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that particular street is one that would help us stay, safe, of
Yeah.
course, but also generate revenue in the future. So a little bit of money, not a little bit, it's a relative term, but a little money ninth
Yeah.
will save us a lot of money
Yeah.
2 years from now type of thing.
I think it would, and keep in mind, since the university did the income survey collection, the data from that is gonna really help on the streets like that, cause if it's in the block group, you can get state CDBG money. And that can help with streets, but you have to have income surveys. The twist to that is unfortunately it has to be just in the low income block groups. So if you aren't between Birch and Ash, Academy and Bade, the railroad tracks, or Sunny, you can't get CDBG. Thus my comment about Dewey, where, Dewey's like on its own, unless we do a water project or other stuff there.
And I have one last one.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the 160-page potential budget or preliminary budget will probably answer this, so I'm sorry if I'm ahead on this one. But we talked about like the next year, like 6.5 or so million to update the buildings for police and safety and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That buildings are a different budget than an officer's salary, right?
They're in the facilities maintenance, but at the crux of everything, I mean, keep in mind, if it's not a utility, you're basically doing like glorified fund transfers and stuff. And so, I mean, it's a combination of your property taxes, your sales taxes, and everything else going toward that. So it is a different fund, but at the end of the day, you have to look at where the money feeding the fund is coming.
It's
from.
coming from the same
Yeah, I
pot.
was gonna say, that's kind of basically my question is like, what do some of these projects and people and departments need? Do they need another person or do they need a
Right,
better
yeah.
building?
Yeah.
It's kind of that.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
Okay, all right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
All right, Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions.
Councilmember Jessup took all your
I'm
questions.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not yet.
Councilmember Espinosa, questions or comments?
You're muted.
Are you on mute?
Mhm.
And you put them to sleep.
Oh, I was like halfway through my speech here and yeah, no, I was saying that incredible projects that I think would add a lot to our community. I think we need to bring Costco or Target or some major big box retailer to help us with the tax base so we can, really take advantage of the momentum that we have and not neglect a lot of the priority 2 or priority 3 projects and leave them, behind to just focus on the high priority needs that our community must have. So I think is great, and I look forward to seeing them come to fruition.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson,
Councilmember Peterson left the meeting in second or two.
okay. Councilmember Williams,
Sorry, I was trying to unmute Councilmember Espinosa by mistake. Right under me. So I don't really have questions because I think my brain is full, but I did have a comment. We talk a lot about how expensive the road projects are. I am not going to argue that. But I think it's important that we remember that a big part of that expense is labor. So we are making jobs when we do this. They may not always be jobs of people who live here, but often live in the valley at least, or the state, but we are making jobs by these projects. And I think we forget that sometimes because, it's just one big number to us, but jobs paid for by the government are still jobs. So that's just my comment.
okay. Councilmember Foil,
No questions, but Mike, great job of being able to pull all of this together and keep track of all of this.
gas tax, how does that affect any of these? Because I think our gas tax revenue is probably gonna keep declining.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, in general, it's declined a couple percent a year, so I mean, it tends to hover around like 100 or so, like thousand.
A year,
Yeah, so
it's not very much.
because I mean, that's why a couple decades ago, the legislature created that TBD thing. Because of that,
Okay.
because keep in mind, in other states, you have other sources. I mean, where I grew up at, everyone had to have the vehicle stickers and stuff, so.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that paid for the roads, so, I mean, that's why there's like a deficiency here compared to like
Yeah.
other areas, because you have lesser streams going to pay.
So that goes to my next comment, for future workshops, can we put the TBD back on the radar?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm so directed to, I mean, really, that would just be, all you would have to do if you so chose was for when it's too late to put on a November ballot, it'd have to be sometime next year. But literally, the entire thing is created and done, so you would just have to put a proposition for the voters saying yes or no for that, and then it's up to them. And that's it.
Okay.
Because legally, it's been created for 6 years.
Okay, well, then it's something that I'd like for us to start talking about again.
Okay.
Councilmember Williams would like to speak.
Councilmember Williams?
It turns out I do have a question. So when I had an electric car, I paid some big number on my tabs. That was supposed to be in lieu of gas tax. And now with a hybrid, I pay half of that. I think it's like 250 somewhere in there. I don't know. It's lots of money and I do it once a year. Do we get any of that money? Or does that all just go to the state DOT?
I would have to look at the exact percentage. It's a very subdued amount.
That's
I'd
what I
have to
think.
back, I'd have to get back to you on that.
It's probably very minuscule.
Yeah, I mean, with an electric car, you drive close to home, so it seems like the local municipality should get most of the money.
Right, and I imagine we're gonna see more of that,
Yeah.
less driving, more electric vehicles. So that's another revenue source, even if it's small, it's something that we're probably gonna keep losing, you know. That
Exactly,
we need to fill from somewhere else.
exactly.
Anyone else, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mike. Let's go on to, do you need a rest? You need to get water or
No,
anything?
no, I can knock it.
Okay, let's talk about the 2023-2028 equipment replacement plan.
Okay. Luckily, these plans go relatively short, so we'll just speed through these. Next slide. Go for a few slides next. Next.
And we all have copies of
Yeah.
it, so we can go.
Yeah,
through them.
so again, I reiterated this earlier, this is a cover of vehicles and so forth.
Mhm.
So budget means they'll occur, budget delay tends to tie back to if COVID and other concerns or supply chain. And then plan means that we're trying to make it happen over the next 6-year window. Next slide. And then this is a list of everything that we've done this last fiscal year. A lot of, we've been able to make a lot of headway thanks to very judicious allocations of the American Rescue Plan Act, and then just following the equipment replacement plan next. This is essentially just showing the breakout of items for year one, and then for the next 6-year period. You'll see the lion's share this year's out of stormwater, and then it ends up being fairly equal in future years. Next slide. Again, you'll see the breakout here of all of the funding proposals, storm at the highest, and then it's followed up by the other divisions. Next slide. Likewise, same thing for the 6-year period. This one hasn't had as much of a heightened cost increase as capital facilities as a percentage. Next. And then the prioritization, again, same as the other plan. Next. Next. Okay, then it's broken out by the various functions. So for administration, our stuff will be in the subsequent years. So 2024 acquisition generator for this building, that would tie in with general improvements for City Hall that we have in the capital facility plan. And then 2026 is replacing some vehicles for building department. These costs were refreshed to show the current effects of inflation. Next slide. Fire department, we made a ton of headway with getting the engine with ARPA. So it has great savings to the taxpayer because we didn't have to do a bond or debt or anything on that. So replacing turnouts, we were able to get ahead on SCBA's, so that's done now, but turnouts 40,000 annually. 2023 brush truck, this was in the plan for this year, but the supply chain has been killing us on this, so we're gonna keep going on that. And 2024 replacing an ambulance, because keep in mind, we have the one new ambulance, then the other one was a used one from Burbank when we originally started the ambulance. So we definitely will need a new one subsequent year. Next slide. Police department just continuing the lease program. That's been a hit with the officers and very good to manage. 2023, the speed radar trailer, because the current one has issues. And then for the escape, and then for 2024, the special enforcement officer pickup will be due because we repurposed the old fire chief's vehicle and that was already old, so now it's older.
I
So,
don't think I've ever seen our speed cart or whatever it's called.
oh, it's around the university and it was put by Lions Park quite a few times. So, yeah.
I don't know how I missed it.
Next slide. Then going into public works, the thing next year is to get a more expensive lawnmower. You can get a cheaper one, but the issue is we keep adding all these like parks and stuff. And the thing is that we only have one park person. So either you're gonna have to add more park people or get better equipment. So this is, yeah. So this is the general premise there. And then 2027, a trailer. Next slide. For stormwater, a lot of this will be the grant. So the replacement Vector, right now we're using the old one that we have equipment out there, and then a box fan, which is needed because that's on its last legs. And then in the future, an Explorer. Next slide. And then for streets, there's just standard improvements with pickup utility truck. And then you can see in future years, tilt trailer, bucket truck, and then just replacing equipment as it's getting older and its reliability is in question. Next slide. And then wastewater, continuing the leasing arrangement out there. It's worked well. Next slide. And then water, utility truck next year in 2027, a backhoe. So that's the general plan for equipment.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to Google to see what it looked like. Okay, so let's go for questions. Councilmember Jessup.
At the moment, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions.
Councilmember Espinosa,
Yes, Mike, is the majority of the equipment replacing older equipment, or we simply do not have a lot of those rigs that we're getting?
A lot there, I would say it's about 50-50. Some of it is replacing old equipment, and then the other portion was equipment we outright didn't have, where we were doing either rentals for stuff or trying to get it from neighboring jurisdictions, and then they're having increased work issues as well, which means we can't source it. So it's a little bit of both.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Selby,
No questions, thank you.
Williams, I am so sorry, my apologies.
Oh, my brain didn't even notice.
what Sherry told on me. Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. Looks good.
All right. Then if there's no further questions, we're going to move on to the information technology plan.
And then with the information technology plan, honestly, for this, we don't really have to go through a PowerPoint because majority of it is maintenance on the software. We've had, the big change is naturally implementing Tyler. And then one of the things we're choosing to do is for asset management to also move to Tyler, because this is the end of the third year with the work contract on the asset management, but we want to move everything all under the one umbrella.
Yes.
So that's the change, but computers, it's following the 7-year plan there. And really it's just carrying forward on the various investments we've made over the last several years. There isn't really massive changes in there.
Okay. Any questions on technology? I won't go through all the council members. No one over there? All right. Then we're going to move on to the fiscal year 2023 state and legislative agenda.
So for this one, I'm actually on the Association of Washington Cities Legislative Committee. They've released their agenda, and a lot of it will tie into our thing. So if you click on the draft state agenda, it follows similar format to past years. So for the capital priorities, naturally wastewater treatment plant, the Western CP water system improvements, Decant facility, and then Majanier. For economic development, infrastructure, trying to protect the various financing programs we utilize. Also sustainable transportation funding, protecting housing, the multifamily tax exemption. We can use it right now, but it sunsets in 2026, which does, but not for all cities, just for the all other cities, which were included in that. So fixing that. General government, you'll see supporting revisions of Growth Management Act, really trying to balance the power between like cities and counties, where it's much more of a cooperative process. You'll see language about revisions Public Works Act to protect against the serial requesters. They're just trying to get the jurisdictions and don't really essentially have a bona fide need for the data. Zoning preemptions, a big one we're going to be opposing because there is a bill, like their hearts are in the right place, but it's really the wrong way to go about it. They're trying to ramrod a bill in Olympia, which would preempt zoning and mandate minimum like densities. And then also say every city, including ones in rural areas, have to do high-rise development around transit corridors, which that's.
Or clearly didn't learn anything from the Police Reform Act.
It's really problematic. So opposing that, and then opposing unfunded mandates, and then public safety, increasing funding for the training academy, direct funding for the diversion programs. Also clarifying the law around the vehicular pursuits, because that's becoming a major issue around here. Our officers are trying to stop people and then they're emboldened to just take off, and it's a major issue.
You know, that's more dangerous.
It is.
Than not, right?
It is. Well,
It's put more people in danger.
And I think we really have to lobby this one because I'm worried the state's gonna follow like what Illinois has just done, which if like, because Illinois has passed a bill where basically they aren't gonna charge bail for like manslaughter and stuff now and just let people out. Oh yeah, it's bad. It's called the Safe-T Act, and pretty much anyone left Illinois is probably gonna move like I did. So I'm just worried that other states are going to follow suit with that. So line has to be drawn somewhere. So that's why there's a really heavy emphasis on public safety this go around. But this is going to be adopted before the 6-year plans and the budget, because this is the heavy lift of the biennium this upcoming year, where they set the budget the next 2 years. And likely they're going to actually be back in person where you can go over there. So we're going to have to do that because they're projecting the majority of these are probably going to stay very like similar. So we're really going to have to watch what goes on over there, specific to growth management, public safety, housing, especially at zoning. But that's my general
Okay.
synopsis.
Okay. Any questions from council? Just go ahead and raise your hand. No? Okay. Then we're gonna, let's see, Mr. Rizzatel is gonna present on the proposal to contract with Stowe Strategies to conduct a tax increment finance study.
Okay, thank you. So I'll introduce this. Mr. Stowe is hopefully on here still.
Oh.
I know.
You should have put that up
Well, what this is you may recall earlier in the year, originally we were gonna look at trying, because then we're gonna get a tax increment finance district going, you have to basically a business plan for it, determine where our best areas to do the TIFs, what the increment actually is, and the state, there's public process, and then state treasurer can approve it or shoot it down. Given our staffing levels and as of late, that with everything else going on, we do not have the staffing to do this internally. What a lot of cities, because this is such a new program, have done is they've engaged with a consultant to make this thing happen. And to get TIFs approved, you have to turn in by June of each year. Otherwise, you have to wait till the following June. Talked to Mr. Stowe, and it sounded like if we get going now, we would be able to do that. But I'm introducing it because after this, if you're all okay with it, I would really like run this, get this under contract next meeting, because this is really key. So with that, Bob.
Thank you, Mike. So my name is Bob Stowe, Stowe Development Strategies. I'm a community and economic development consultant that helps cities with, their redevelopment dreams or commercial projects, and working on probably 4, maybe 5 different tax increment financing projects across the state. And I'd just be delighted to be able to help your city not only evaluate tax increment financing to see if it's the right tool for you, examine different areas that you would like us to look at to form a tax increment area, but then also as your city administrator had mentioned, to prepare the project analysis that is submitted then to the Office of State Treasurer for their review. And that's really the longest time frame in terms of gaining comments back from the State Treasurer's office, which has a 90-day time frame in which to review any project analysis. As of late, they've been producing their comments in a much quicker time, but we don't know how many other projects they might be looking at the same time that you're submitting as well. And I know you have the proposal in front of you, and I think the city administrator may have a PowerPoint presentation as well. So I'm glad to address any questions that council might have, or sort of walk you through the tax increment financing process. I'll just really leave it up to you and how you'd like to proceed from this point forward.
I'll just do a very brief refresher. And if anyone has any other questions, let me know. But basically, you can draw around an area, and then in essence, it's having to do with the taxes, and then you basically project out over like a 25 year period where essentially the deviation is in the taxes, and you can essentially bond against it to put in infrastructure to spur the economic development projects. That's very commonplace. Every other state except here. This was the last state in the United States to adopt tax increment financing. Our nearby neighbors have utilized it for years and years. Hermiston, that's why they're really at the cutting edge of stuff. Over there, it's called urban renewal, but same principle. And that's gotten their downtown going, other projects going. Milton Freewater briefly used it on the whole Sykes development when they were brought into town. So it's really a key tool to spur economic development that really would be prevented if the public infrastructure wasn't put in place. And I mean, everyone here's been here long enough to know that the projects we're talking about, they're definitely generational type stuff where the investment needs to happen to come out on the other side, like with Major, the parking lots around College Avenue. There's a lot of stuff there where time and time again, we've been trying to just get the developers to essentially do it. But with the odd shaped lots and stuff, it's been in a standstill. So this is a way to really get stuff going. I know he's working out in Pasco. Porter Pasco's doing stuff out by Dirigal. City of Pasco's doing stuff out by Broadmoor. So this is really a get cooking in the southwest part, because I think the initial concept is, I mentioned to you all, when you authorized the concept to even investigate TIF, was that the one TIF we would look at incorporating the Stone Creek Lakeside area across from the high school, and then have it go up College Avenue. So we could do the parking lots. And then as far as the second one, because each city can only do, each jurisdiction can only do two. Really, I would say that one would be determined if we hire Mr. Stowe, what's found. Because you could do one along the commercial properties by Myra Road. You could do one over by Martin Airfield. I don't really know on its surface which one would be more judicious to do. So that's just my cursory point on that.
All right, so for this one, I'm gonna go through council members. Mr. Jessup, any questions or comments?
So if I understand correctly, you don't have a consultant, this costs the breakdown individually, like the contractor, and all this is on our city staff.
So if we contracted with Stowe Strategies and Eco Northwest, that would all be on, I mean, they consult with us, but they would put this all together.
If we didn't do it,
Oh, if we didn't do it,
If we
yeah.
did
if we didn't go with Stowe.
I'm
Strategy.
getting punchy with the other plan. So if we didn't do it, then it would fall on the city staff, and originally that was the premise. However, with the finance department, between the grants, which you all saw,
Yeah.
the audit and everything else, if that happens, I can't really predict when we could easily put that in without dramatically affecting workloads, and that's not fair to anyone.
Yeah, so
Do you think they'd even be qualified to be able to do it? Have the experience to do it?
Well, yeah, I mean, Brian's a CPA,
Oh, but it's all
and
accounting.
I have a planning degree, so hypothetically, yeah, but the issue is with our limited staff, and then other grants, and then
Sure.
other stuff is falling off the plate that
the
they
cost
have.
benefit of it.
Yeah.
And really the efficiency for
Yeah.
our staff. Oh, absolutely.
Well, I'll give you a great case in point. So like today, when I met with the law staff person with that Safe Routes to School grant, it sounds like we're gonna get that. And that grant would be about $900,000. So if I'm too busy to do that, then there's 900,000 out the window.
That's right.
So you have to look at it that way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Cleveland?
So this seems like a great tool to use to invest in our city. What is the typical disaster plan if something happens where we invest and it just doesn't end up working out? Do we just end up paying for that from the general fund, or kind of what's our strategy for coping with?
Well,
that?
essentially you have the 20 to 25 years, but yeah, you are correct. If it didn't work out, then the city still is on the hook, and that's why you make sure you have a very detailed plan, which is another reason why I would really like to engage a professional consultant, because again, this is a very big decision. So someone's doing it for all these other jurisdictions. I believe it would be in our best interest to have that happen that way.
Because last I heard Sykes was vacant, right?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yikes. Councilmember Espinosa, questions or comments?
Yeah, so one comment and one question. The question is, how much would the cost be for the consultant to provide this service to the city?
It's in the proposal.
Is it the second one, that
Page number,
PPP,
58,000.
or is it in the big one?
Let's see, College Place 10. What those? Okay, then scroll down. Yeah, on page. Slide 10.
Yeah. So, Councilmember Espinosa, this is in the, on the board doc, so you should be able to review it afterwards for further information.
Page 10.
Page 10.
58,500?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first question, and the comment is that I think that nobody likes taxes, especially if you want to make our community more attractive for businesses to move in. And I get the TIF, it's a long-term investment in our community, but I just have mixed feelings about, you know, the planning process and how we're looking at plans to do economic development, but at the same time create a community that's attractive to invite new businesses to come in with incentives such as taxes, so on and so forth. So that's the comment that I wanted to make, and I just wanted to ask about the price. So thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
No questions or comments. I guess I have a comment that I think this is a good idea and will help make sure that we don't have people sitting around 50 years from now going, why did they just, let everything go falling apart?
Exactly. Councilmember Boyle?
No question. I think this is great. Like when we leave the professional tasks to professional.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Stell. We appreciate you being here. Next, yeah, we gotta start moving guests up to the top of the agenda. All right.
No worries. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. Okay, so next is the Walla Wastewater Treatment Consolidation Feasibility Study.
Really, the Q&A on that is gonna be next week, because Alex Fazzari, the engineer, will be here to take questions next week. I want to make sure y'all have this though, so that way you could start looking at it and formulate questions for when he's here. Because it basically lists the various cost benefit analyses as well as potential route runs to get sewage up to Walla, and then various decision points that need to be made.
Are we expecting a decision need to be made next week?
No.
Okay.
No, we have until the end of the year, but it's just, it would just be good to have a gauge where you're leaning, because honestly, at the end, what my plan is, I'm gonna make a chart with the benefits and drawbacks, especially as you all have discussions with Mr. Fazzari. And because really, it's almost like about even that there's drawbacks on both sides, like severe drawbacks on both. No solution on this. I will be the first to admit, no solution on this is the greatest one, but we have to do something.
It's gonna come down to what our comfort zone is on which one we're willing to risk and which one we're willing to accept.
Well, and then the wild card in this whole thing is, I mean, when we started this discussion, I thought we had Mr. Shawa to work with until February. And then I got the call, hey, I'm like leaving, like next week,
right?
later, pretty much. So there's also like a vacuum over there now too, and that wasn't anticipated at all, because originally he was supposed to be here until February, and our decision point was when that frame. So that in and of itself is unique.
So to next week, are we Are we meeting with ecology in the state?
It's not meeting like Ecology in the state, it'll just be the council meeting, and Mr. Fazzari, our on-call engineer, will be here just talk through.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah,
Last we had our joint meeting.
Yeah.
There was intent to meet with ecology in the state.
yeah,
Leading, is that still happening? Or has
that'll still be happening, but what's happening first is that Mr. Fazzari is going around, he's having a meeting with us first,
Okay.
having a meeting with them,
Got
because
it.
he's trying to be respectful, maybe at first not everyone wants to be in the same room if there's like sensitive questions, and then a meeting together to work through this. I'm just essentially foreshadowing from at least when we started this thing that there's other things that play, for instance, the cost being relatively the same. So it's gonna boil down to basically it boils down to control and having a say. So like a true district and also the threat, really weighing the threat of the phase 2 and the phase 3. And Mr. Fazzari's an engineer, so he could speak more of that than me. I just want to make sure that this was forecast, so you can all start reading this.
And this specific one that's on
Yes,
this
yes,
Word docs, okay.
yes.
So make sure we do our homework.
Yes, that's why I have this on here, a request to please do your homework.
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, so-
Here.
Next Tuesday is not the day to open this
Yeah.
file.
Hmm.
Okay, questions or comments? Nobody online?
Sure,
Okay.
we will not.
Okay, then let's move on to the 2023 Budget Economics and Community Survey results.
Okay, so,
You're almost up, Brian. I hope
Yeah.
you're priming your voice.
so, okay, click down. Point,
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, maybe, tell you what, maybe. Snap. Anything else. So, so the PowerPoint with this, basically, I aggregated some economic data points of what's going on locally in the valley here, as well as some results from the citizen survey in graphic form. So I would say take a look at that. If you have any, oh, okay. Okay, I would say with all these, just take a look at it and let me know. In general, what you will see is that our employment is still very strong here. And then the unemployment is still very low here. And then keep going. And then the housing prices, you'll see where this is at. This is for 99324 here, and this is a graph for the entire MLS, and then the light blue is the zip code for College Place. So a little bit of a minor downtick, but still relatively elevated to historicals.
What is MLS?
That's like a realtor listing service as far as homes for sale and so forth.
Multi-listing system.
Yep. And then likewise, you can see all of this data here in just the aggregation of residential to condo. Next slide. The housing affordability index, anything above 100 is affordable. If it's below 100, it's unaffordable, and you'll see we're down just north of 60. So that's shown there definitely is an issue from the cost of the housing. Next slide. The consumer sentiment, I showed this the past years, and it just shows optimism from people's relative to expenditures, and it ties into sales tax and everything else. You can see that, basically going into the summer, it was at lows mirroring that of around the recession. It's starting to uptick back a little bit, but it's something to monitor. Next slide. Okay, then we're getting into the survey next. This is interesting. So less people fully filled it out, even though we had people from the university going door to door. And it was out since July. It was the same length as it was in past years. So it's a lengthy survey. But for those that filled out, I aggregated the data. The highest response areas is College Place #2 subdivision, which is neighborhood right behind City Hall, going out to Larch, and then Whitman PD by Kiwanis Park, and then Highland Park subdivision. The city survey results, if you really want to drill down on them, there's interactive tables that you can look at on SurveyMonkey. Next slide. And then basically the net promoter score, that is satisfaction with services. Walla and a lot of other cities do this. I've been trying to keep track of it historically over the years, and you'll see that based on the responses we've gotten in general, it's the positive end of the spectrum, which is really good. Next slide. And then really trying to ask in a different way, where people feel funding should go for various departments and agencies and so forth. Really where you'll see jumps and increased funding is you'll see that for basically fire department, police department, parks and streets. That's a trend line for those four. Next slide. And then there's interactive panels for all the elements of the survey that you can peruse at your leisure.
Okay.
And that is that data point.
Okay. And it was pretty lengthy,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Do you know about how long the average time was to take somebody?
yeah, it's the average time was about 11 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me about 10 minutes to go through. It took my husband longer because he didn't understand what a lot of the things were, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions or comments on the survey?
I had a question in terms of what is the general response over the years? Because at first glance, 0.51%
Yeah.
response to the population is really low.
I know.
And I don't recall, like I'm actively looking for this and I'm in the city and I think I saw it once a long time ago. How does this, does it get implemented all one chunk? Is it able to be implemented in 2 chunks? Over, is sent out more than once, sort of so
Well, as far as it being sent out, we ran various advertisements for it on social media. It was in the newsletter, which was mailed out. And then when the university students went door to door, they actually had little postcards with QR codes that went to it as well. So, and basically we promoted random times from July all the way out to basically the previous week.
and with links to
Yeah.
it and all
Yeah.
that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
And then are you able to do more than one survey in terms of like 11 minutes?
Yeah.
I know it's decently long for, I mean, even halfway through that, people tend to go, all right, that.
Yeah.
Do you get partial results or you have to finish it?
No, yeah, you don't have to finish it. We would get partial results.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
because none of the questions are required on there,
Yes.
so you can just move on.
Yeah, because I think there's some questions that, like the municipal and district court, my
Yeah.
husband's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I've never been involved in that, so he
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to answer the satisfaction with it. So I think there's lots of questions like that some people couldn't answer because they just don't have any experience.
I'm just wondering, is that a general trend? Again, I'm ignorant on the trend and how typically cities respond. It seems 0.51% is really low.
Historically, it's been usually a little bit north of 1%. The issue was that like the first 2 years I was here, we tried to break it up more. and we were still at only like the 1%.
Okay.
So it's real, yeah, so it's really hard to say this time. I thought it was gonna be more because we had like students out giving the QR
Yeah.
codes
Yeah.
and stuff too.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a hard nut to crack.
I'm
Yeah, it really is.
yeah, participation on the front end is very difficult to get citizens. They always want to wait until after the decision's made, so that they can get involved at that point.
Yeah,
So it gets really hard, to do that. But yeah, it's something definitely to try to figure out how much more
yeah,
to engage them in. To do it.
What's offered, it's out there.
yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Not on, okay. All right, then we're gonna move on to our last item, which is Finance Director Brian Carlton, who is presenting on the 2023 preliminary budget. Thank you, Mike. You did an excellent job.
It's working very
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. We're required to present the first iteration of the budget at this meeting. And I'll share my screen. I know this has been a long meeting. I'll try to work quickly through the screens. We'll have 2 or 3 additional iterations of this similar presentation. So I'll try to work through it quickly.
Hold on, Brian, a quick question. Robert, are you here for just waiting to see if somebody has a question for you?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think we will. Why don't you go ahead and have a good night? I wish I could have seen the screen. I would have let you go a long time ago.
No, that's all right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, sorry, Brian.
He was waiting for this riveting performance on the budget. So at the last meeting, we introduced the revenue estimates for the 2023 budget. Here's a little bit of the process and schedule. We went through the schedule a couple months ago, and no change, but we're following this process and working towards our final adoption of the budget, hopefully in the council meeting on December 13th. Our key assumptions, conservative projections on revenues and expenditures. Of course, we worked through the whole process trying to combine the different components into this first iteration. We have the revenue estimates that have been incorporated. We have our operating costs requests from all the department heads have been incorporated. Payroll has been submitted. We'll hit the payroll at near the end. Sean has submitted that. The capital through Mike's CFP, IT, and ER&R plans have all been incorporated for 2023, as well as the funding components for all those projects, whether it be grants, loans, out of the different fund reserves, et cetera. You were provided all the detail. I believe it's like 175 pages. So you can bruise through that. And if you have questions on that, you can email me or bring them up in the meetings. The good thing is the funds are in balance and we have no negative ending fund balances. So far our numbers seem to be solid. Some of the key objectives is maintaining our core services, police, fire, all our utilities, investing in critical infrastructure. We'll get into, we won't touch too much on the capital stuff, but there is slides in here on that. And then addressing staffing gaps and definitely looking at competitive wages in order for us to retain our valued employees. We'll continue obtaining grants. And then one of the biggest areas is in the CIP is addressing potential inflationary impacts on that 6-year plan and seeing how that impacts the city. Because as you know, our ability to increase revenues is nowhere near the current inflationary components. You know, we can only increase our property taxes at a max of 1% a year. And then we're held hostage by the sales tax and property and the other taxes. So here's the preliminary budget. We started the year at $18.4 million in carryover fund balances. Our revenues are projected at $62 million or $61.4 million next year, and expenditures at $63 million. You have to keep in mind when you're looking at the revenues, our revenues and expenditures include interfund transfers. We have a number of funds, and every time you transfer money, it becomes a revenue for one fund and an expenditure at the other. So we do see a bit of, if you compare us to other cities of the same size, they may not have the revenue component that we do, just because we have a lot of interfund transfers. So we're going to work in the next year or two to try to reduce those number of funds so we can, try to eliminate that. That's how it looks. Our ending fund balance is projected at just under $17 million, which is a drawdown of 1.5. A large amount of that drawdown relates to the ARPA funds. And of course, we'll have received $2.6 million in ARPA funds from last year and this year, and we'll be carry forwarding expenditures of close to $1.8 million next year, which will be in that opening fund balance. So a lot of that is not because of how we're operating, just the nature of how the funds are flowing through. Don't forget that we're cash basis city, so we don't do accrual accounting. So the money comes in, the money goes out, and it's recorded that way. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of numbers on the page. These are all the funds. They're sorted by groups, our current expense. I'll focus in on the surplus deficit totals by the groupings. You can see as our current expense is showing a deficit of $2.2 million. And as I just discussed, that's mostly in current expense and relating to the ARPA distributions. You can also see we're drawing down our technology reserve a little bit, but at the next presentation, I'll have a reserve calculation, which shows you that we maintain our reserve limits. We have some special revenue funds, small dollar amount. They show a reduction of $15,000, just due to additional spending in our anticipation of the revenues. The hotel motel tax, in particular, goes to funding some of our events that we're having. The debt service funds that are not related to utilities are here, and our commercial drive bond fund. If you recall, we made a extra payment this year, and we paid that fund off. And I believe in the 201 fund, we have one more year of payment left on that. So that'll be good to get those out of the way. We have a number of other capital reserve funds, and I'll focus in on the REIT 2. And if you can remember, the REIT is real estate excise tax, and that's the project that's funding Lions Park project. So there's carry forward amounts in that 1.4 million we've been accumulating for a number of years to fund Lions Park, and that will be drawn down next year. That's why they're showing a significant reduction in that fund balance, leaving only our estimate at $18,000 in the REIT 2. The next group is our street funds, the operating, and our debt and improvement fund, which is our capital, and a number of different projects going on there. In total, we show a surplus of $72,000 and a healthy ending fund balance. The next section is the water utility, including there's a couple construction funds in there. a debt service fund. And you can see that, again, we are showing a slight, sorry, did I miss a question?
No?
Okay. We're showing a slight surplus in that group of funds and a healthy ending fund balance at $4.6 million. And those funds in that program have to stay within the utility. So for all the 400 series accounts, those operate like a small business. So we're not allowed to take money out to, say, cover current expense or to help one of the other utilities out. Those are required funds to stay in those funds for future financing. The biggest numbers you'll see in the next series is our wastewater utility, and that is the funding of the wastewater treatment plant. According to the CIP, we have in there to spend $26 million next year, and that's what is incorporated into that budget. Based on decisions made on the wastewater treatment plant over the next few months, we'll maybe change that, but it will reduce potentially the expenditures, but then it will reduce the revenues. So you can see currently under the 411 account, that's the account that has the capital project for the wastewater treatment plant, and you can show that we show it fully funded. Overall, the wastewater utility, based on these calculations, is carrying a healthy reserve balance and a positive surplus for the year. That will be affected in future years because we will not have to start repaying the debt on the loan to potential loan to the Department of Ecology for, I believe it's $16 million. Will not show in the budget until future years, but because we don't start making loan payments until the project is complete. The next group of funds is the stormwater utility, and again, they are operating on a decent surplus in the year and a good carry forward. The 440 account in the next grouping is the new ambulance utility that was started this year. You can see an increase in the, there is an increase in the revenues, but the expenditures are quite high. And this is, we anticipated because we are only, we only have 2/3 of the total rate being charged for 2023. So we're showing a small ending fund balance, but that should improve in years going forward. The 500 series fund is our equipment. That's an internal fund, which they do all the shop work, all the repairs, and then allocate out to the different departments. And then the last is our flexible benefits fiduciary account. Those funds maintaining our flexible benefit account. So overall, you can see again, there's the drawdown of the $1.5 million, leaving us with an ending fund balance of just under $17 million. In the past, I've shown these fund details by unit, breaking out our operating capital and comparing recurring to non-recurring. Some of the key points here is we do have $1.8 million in carryover in ARPA projects, which affect that deficit balance. We have projected payroll increase at 8% for unrepresented, and whatever increase was included in any contract terms are in there at those amounts. We are limited to our property tax increase at 1%, and at a future meeting, we'll go through the property tax in detail.
Brian, Councilmember Jessup has a question.
Yes.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it has something to do with the initial sheet you just went over. I think you had mentioned that a lot of the down was because of the ARPA funds. Which of these accounts were negatively affected by the loss of the ARPA funds?
Well, don't forget it's cash, so that's a little deceiving because the cash was into the current expense. So we've received, and it's in that current expense at the top of the sheet. You see the 001 at the very top? In that $4.1 million beginning fund balance, there's approximately $1.8 million of ARPA funds that have accumulated that were unused.
Okay, so if I'm looking through the sheet and I see the expenditures at negative or something, so on and so forth, I can assume those are not the loss of the ARPA because that's in a different.
Well, it's not a loss of ARPA, is that if we were accrual, we would handle this different, but we're cash basis. So we got the cash in 2021 and 2022, and we're going to spend portions of it over 2022, 23, and 24. Most of it is actually going in, I believe, in 2023, and that's why you show that deficit under current expense 001. I mean, there's more to it than just that, but that's one of the key drivers of why you see a deficit in that fund.
Perfect, thank you.
And again, you can see the interfund transfers are quite large. If you look in the detail, you'll see we transfer a lot of money. A lot of money goes to the streets, goes to IT. It goes IT fund, which is 012. It goes to a number of different funds. So there's a lot of intercompany transfers there because the current expense funds a lot of the operations, all the operations besides the utilities. Here's the streets fund. You can see it is operating at a surplus expected in 2023. A number of projects going on. Some of the funding mechanism, that you can see in that interfund transfer under revenues, that 800,000 comes from current expense. Currently, you cannot operate the street fund as a utility and charge accordingly. Here is the water utility, including the operating capital and debt and internal transfers. And you can see on an operating basis, they do spend within their means. And then also, if you look at their capital, they're also, meeting the debt requirements or funding requirements of all those projects. A little bit of interfund transfers. That interfund transfer under the recurring, that is the funding of the debt and the funding of some of the capital projects. Here's our grouping of the wastewater funds. Again, showing an operating surplus. And again, they have operating transfers to fund debt and capital. And you can see in there the big amount in the non-recurring revenue and expenditures. That is the wastewater treatment plant project. Here's the stormwater utility, again, operating at a operating surplus. And again, you can see currently we show their revenues for capital projects, non-recurring, compared to their expenditures. You actually show a deficit. Some of that is in relation to the funding of the stormwater utility, and it does carry forward some capital revenue into future years. Similar to other funds like REIT, where we accumulated that $1.3 million for use in Lion Parks, we are accumulating some money for future stormwater projects. And here's the final grouping I'm going to show you, and that is the real estate excise tax funds, the REIT 1 and 2. And you can see Our revenue projections at $444,000. All that fund and carry forward from prior years is being utilized into Lions Park. That's why we're showing a large deficit next year. So we carry forward approximately, if I go back, you can see under the REIT 306, which is funding that project, we're carrying forward $1.4 million in a cumulative balance to pay for the Lions Park project. That was intentional. And you can see that we have a deficit of 1.3 million. So that covers the next year's deficit. And as Mike mentioned, that we'll have to, spend some time accumulating additional REIT dollars to fund some of those additional park projects going forward, unless we get grant funding. This is the same slide I presented at the last meeting showing the anticipated revenues. I'm not going to go into detail on that, although I did provide a breakdown by the different funding, by the different funds, so you can see the total amount in relation to current expense, the road fund, the real estate excise tax, the water fund, wastewater, storm, and ambulance utility. And there you can see up in the current expense, the American Plan Rescue, where we received $1.3 million in 21. We received the same amount in 2022, and we'll be carrying forward that, a majority of that. I think in 2021, we spent about $300,000 and a similar amount in 2022. So that's where I came up with the $1.8 million carry forward to 2023 and 2024, if any's left over. Here is a slide that Sean provided me to show you the staffing. Current information, we have 59 full-time employees. You can see the part-time employees listed there. We have our council, our mayor, and the positions added to the 2023 budget include a facilities maintenance worker 2, stormwater maintenance 2, mental health co-responder, which is grant funded, and an additional police officer. Some of the assumptions.
Oh, Brian, I just want to touch base really quickly on the add positions besides the mental health one. The facilities one, we added because as of currently, it's been a hybrid of John, who supervises community development, and then Scott Hall, who's our building official, trying to keep the buildings going. And especially with increased things going on building department wise and everything else, they're running out of time to do that with everything else going on. Thus, putting a facilities person in place and moving that function under the public works umbrella. Stormwater, there's increased NPDES permit requirements on us, thus the need for additional staffer there. And then the police officer, we've been operating these like oblong shifts where on paper it looks like we have equal people in shifts, but with the school resource officer, we were actually pulling an officer from the active shifts where it was leaving one shift one short. And then they're having to fill it with overtime, and it's getting to a point where putting that overtime as a constant thing isn't too healthy. So thus having a police officer position is more so within that school resource officer paradigm. So hire directly for said position.
Do you know how many police officers we have right now? It's okay, I'll just wondering off the top of your head, no worries. Okay.
More than one.
At least a few.
And Joey, Officer Joey's no longer on the rotation, right?
No, he's in the task.
He's in the task force.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, got it.
Yeah, so those additions are currently incorporated into the existing budget. And also the increases reflected on the right-hand side of the page have been used as an estimate. The police union negotiations are still ongoing, so we're not sure where that will end up. So that could potentially be an increase in the costs. And the contract employees, which include Mike, Ree, and Troy, they'll be based on a CPIW that's from September to September. So at the point of doing this, the final numbers weren't available. Under health insurance, we did not have those numbers available yet. We do have them now, and I think there's minimal increases in all those areas. And then one thing we are bringing to council to approve this year is to currently we have Life Flight as an employee payment option. As you may know, that is the ability to get airlifted to a hospital outside of Walla Walla. Currently, the employees pay that benefit. We're recommending that the city pays that at $59 per employee per year. And you can see the total cost there of $5,300. A good benefit for our employees. And, given our, having to potentially get to additional care outside, we think it's an important benefit.
Brian, Paul has a question.
I don't want.
Oh, you don't have a question after all?
No,
Oh,
excuse me, but thank you.
Okay. And on that Life Flight, we were talking about it, with the current medical situation that we have here in the valley with the shortages, and we only have one hospital, and they're not fully staffed. That's why we felt the Life Flight would probably would be an appropriate benefit for staff.
Well, they transport people, for
Every-
anything,
Right.
anything. So.
Yeah. And for $59 or what is it? So they've got $69 a year.
Where do you get the 90 employees though, if we have 59 budgeted employees, or is that including the part-time employees as well? At the bottom, it says 90 employees.
Oh, I believe that's because we were also including the volunteer firefighters.
We were.
And we're trying to do that as an incentive to
Yes.
keep our volunteer numbers up,
should.
as enable for us to have any more full-time
Amazing.
people over there.
Well, I think it's good. We should give them that extra protection.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
it's important.
that is correct.
Yeah.
That includes the volunteers.
If the closest burn center, as far as I know, is still, well, it may be Spokane from here, but from Tri-Cities, you have to get flown to Harborview. So yeah, I think it's a really important benefit.
And just so you
So
know, you can
we'll,
go on it yourself, and it's really cheap.
And that price is for your entire household.
Yeah.
It's not for a person, it's your entire household for that same rate. And it's should be a non-negotiable.
Sorry, Brian.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. So we'll incorporate any additional changes as we go through the budget process. I won't go into the capital in detail this go around. I'm sure you've all been well versed on what's transpiring. But there for information and just to let you know that all those dollars have been incorporated into this iteration. And also the related funding mechanism. Again, the IT budget, just a big portion of that finance and admin is the implementation of Tyler. And there is a large implementation cost next year. And the year to year after that will actually go down below what we paid for those same systems this year. But we do have some crossover costs and the implementation costs. We're looking at approximately, I believe it's about $70,000 a year for Tyler, and we were spending just above that in our current programs.
78.
Like a rip-off.
Here's our equipment repair. And again, those have all been allocated to the different departments and included in the capital numbers. I won't go into this in a lot. I'll keep this slide moving forward through our iterations, but you can see at the bottom there, and also there, this is the trend of our utility rate increases over the year. And you can see what the proposed is according to our utility rate models. I'm currently working on those utility rate models to see if there is a potential change in the rate before we adopt the budget in December. I'll have them done within the next few weeks. But those are currently the increases that were recommended or were approved in that rate model from 2022. And of course, the ambulance utility was approved subsequent to that. And that is the rate that was approved in that, that adoption. So it's sort of an interesting trend to see how our rates have gone. There is a cost to getting us up to, you know, this century status as far as roads and infrastructure. The next steps are we're going to go through, you know, numerous times checking the numbers to make sure that they're all in appropriately. We'll reconcile the interfund transfers just to make sure those are correct. We'll update the capital requirements and funding options as changes occur. We'll review line item costs for discrepancies with the department heads. One thing that we didn't have time to complete was the exact cost transfers for the IT costs. There are numbers plugged in there, but those may change slightly. And then we need to update the wages with the PD union agreement once that happens, or I guess if it happens this year. That's it.
Will happen.
It was a little quick, but
Tell them about the life flight.
I'm open for questions.
The union negotiators. about
Oh,
the
there you
life flight.
go. There you go. We'll tell the union negotiators about the life flight benefit. That'll close the deal. All right. Are you done, Brian?
Yes,
Oh,
that was fast.
all right. Questions or comments? Are there anything other? Anybody?
Lauren's not here.
Yeah. Ms. Williams or Mr. Espinosa?
No, I don't have any. Good job.
Just a quick question, Brian. So the proposed increase of water and sewer from 2022 to 2023, I see 3.6%. Is that because we're expecting to do the infrastructure projects?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of things. If you, I'll present the rate models at a future meeting, but you'll see in the rate model, it projects out the rate we need to incur over the next few years to fund the projects. You know, so when you're funding projects, if you're using debt, then you need to repay that debt and you need to have the rates. You want to smooth the rates out. You don't want to hit somebody with the, you know, you pay it off over 20 years. So you may have to increase the rate now slowly to have the required cash flow to meet those payment obligations.
Perfect. And then the second question on slide 13 on the budget staffing, just clarification for contract employees, is there going to be an 8.7% increase in year-over-year wages? Is that what that 8.7 is?
Yes, the agreements between the city and those employees state they are paid the increase at the CPIW rate of inflation.
Okay.
So whatever that is year over year from September to September, that's their rate increase.
What was in the slide was an estimate because that's what was shown as the CPI August to August.
Right, so it could be lower, or it could be this, we don't know. I don't know. We should know it soon, so,
Sorry, a quick question for crossover, so the negotiations for like a school employee, we use COLA,
Yeah.
but is that similar to CPIW?
CPI, so CPIW, that's basically an aggregate of the increases of goods and services per region, and it's based on the West. So that's taken into account aggregates. The Bureau of Labor Statistics does pretty much for the rest of the country from like Colorado, Montana onward to the coast. And it's a form of the COLA. A lot of the union contracts deal with that in certain ways. Sometimes they're capped, sometimes they're forward. For the 3 contracts, it's tied to whatever the CPIW is released by Bureau of Labor Statistics for the September.
I'm just wondering why it's a 1.7% higher than the cost of living number. Why? Well, I wonder what's added to make it 8.7 versus the 7 for COLA.
yeah, it's a pretty standard number for any sort of inflationary calculation. It's a common mechanism used for that. But when don't forget, when there's zero inflation, that's the increase that they get in that year is 0. So
No, I get it.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like my put it this way, first like 4 years of my career here was hovering between like 1 and 2. So.
Yeah. So it goes with time.
Yeah.
Jay Shereen would like to speak.
Oh, gosh. Ms. Schmidt,
Hope you guys didn't forget I was here.
I didn't know. I saw you walk out the door.
Yeah, and then I came home and then I hopped on. I looked it up really quick. It looks like the September CPIW should be released October 13th. So we'll get that updated and added in there.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? Nope. Brian, thank you.
yes,
Thank you,
and
thank
we'll
you.
see a similar presentation in a couple weeks.
Now, I don't know what you did to Sherry, that she doesn't like you, that she put you last on the agenda, but you need to make good with her.
I think it was because I didn't get the presentation done until this morning.
I think there was a reason that I was first. So
Yeah, see?
If you look at the detail that's provided, we go through every single one of those lines. So it takes a lot, and there's a lot of reconciliation goes on between those numbers. So we spend a lot of time poring over those.
That's why we appreciate them. All right, so we're gonna move on to closing items. Is there any other business for good of the order?
A couple questions here. Would it be possible to bring back the refreshments that we had at previous workshops? Another thing is, I'm wondering if we can block the city of Walla Walla jobs listing page, just in case Mike gets any ideas.
Similar.
Yeah, he knows he better not.
We love you, Mike.
Toilet paper and his house. Now that he owns it. All right, I just have a question. No, we need an updated city council picture for our website.
We do.
And so we need to get that scheduled and see
Yeah.
if we can get that taken care of. All
I
right,
mean, half those people are still.
yeah, but still, the other half's not. We need to get the new ones in. That's the bigger problem. All right, anything else? All right, do we have a motion to conclude?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any objections? All right, the meeting is concluded at 8:27. 8:28 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
All right, have a good night.
I think morning we promised that we were staying for up to 3 hours. I feel like that's cutting it really close.
You're right. 2 minutes.